on ESPN2.
The Early Line with Mario and Musso. Mario and Musso have your early line on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
I mean, we're just here to have fun and win and have fun by winning.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studios, here's Mario Jerez and Matt Musso.
And a good Tuesday afternoon. Welcome in, Matt Musso, alongside Mario Jerez to my right. We have your early line, Casey Gaines and Taylor Sharp. They're along for the ride on the audio and video boards. Glad you're along for the ride as well. Got plenty to get to today here on Early Line. Of course, Daily Spread will kick us off here momentarily. Going to start getting into a little bit of fantasy football. Mario's got some fantasy football thoughts off-season wise that he wants to go ahead and get through. I mean, look, we're under 25 days now to the NFL preseason, so fantasy draft season's almost upon you. So Mario's got a few thoughts there. And LSU football, they just continue to ride this wave of recruiting success. Caleb Jackson, 4-star running back from Liberty Magnet here in Baton Rouge, commits to the Tigers earlier today. We'll talk about the latest with LSU's recruiting class, where they stand, and just the BK takeover as a whole. How are you, Mario?
Doing well, Musso. BK is taking over.
I'd say not as well as Brian Kelly.
Not as good as Brian Kelly, but still pretty good. It was a rough night last night. You know, the Summer Pels destroyed the Summer Hawks. I feel really bad for back in Atlanta yesterday. Definitely learned my lesson, though. And Max Fried, more like Max Fraud, man. Couldn't go for one less strikeout. Would have made my night a little more bearable.
Just one strikeout. The guy's pretty darn good.
Just one.
He didn't have his best stuff last night. I watched the majority of that game. As soon as the Mets scored again in the 8th, I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to go take a shower and go to bed. But he didn't have his best stuff, but battled through. I mean, for him to only give up 2 runs, he pitched really well, kept the Braves in it. Max Scherzer was just Max Scherzer last night. We're going to talk some Braves-Mets a little bit here, though, because that series is still very intriguing.
Yes, it is. You did keep the Braves in it. Wish you could have kept more on my wallet, though.
Oh, I mean, don't look, me too. I had the Braves on the money line. Don't get me wrong. I'm totally in that same boat for you. Let's see if we can't turn it around, right the ship a little bit here today, though. More plays coming at you right now in our Daily Spread, brought to you by Suspense Games.
Daily. Our Daily Spread. What are Mario and Musso watching tonight?
I'm talking about big money. Real big money.
This is our Daily Spread.
Let's head to Truist Park and talk Braves-Mets, because that is our no runs in the first inning play today. Looking at minus 120 for a 6:20 Central Time first pitch. David Peterson for the Metropolitans, Spencer Strider for the Bravos. Had to go off the beaten path a tad for this one. I mean, you look at David Peterson, you look at Spencer Strider. Neither of those guys have spent the entire season in their respective rotations, but that's where they've kind of made their home now, and the first inning numbers are pretty darn good. Let's start with David Peterson. In 11 starts, he's 8-3, no runs first inning, allowing just a .211 opponent's batting average against and walking just 4. Had a start earlier this season against this Braves team, threw up a 0 in the first inning. You always love to see precedent when looking at this angle. Spencer Strider, 8 starts this year for Atlanta. He is 7-1. No runs in the first inning, allowing just a .143 batting average against and walking 3. We've talked about the Mets' struggles offensively as of late, and how about that? They've been averaging 4 runs per game over their last 10. Last night, hit it right on the number. Bang, 4 runs for the Mets. This is their first time seeing Strider this year. They saw him twice last year in relief outings. So it stands to reason it could maybe take a trip through the lineup to get going. A good price on 2 under-the-radar NRFI pitchers. Let's take it. Mets, Braves, no runs first inning, minus 120.
We like it. Let's stay in Major League Baseball real quick for my daily prop bet here. Looking at over 1.5 total bases for Trey Turner for the Dodgers versus the Cardinals. Not a great price on this one, minus 130, but I do really like the trends here, and that's despite the fact that Turner has not been good in the last few games. He's kind of slumping right now because he is 3 for 14 in his last 14 at-bats, but getting closer to the All-Star game, I think this is the perfect time for him to get back on track. And he's going to be taking on a lefty tonight in Matthew Liberatore. And Liberatore has been pretty mediocre this season. He has an ERA of 4.74. And despite that slump for Turner that we just talked just talked about, he's coming into this one still with a 301 batting average and 11 homers on the season. And speaking of the All-Star game, Trey Turner was named an NL All-Star over the weekend. He joins his fellow Dodgers Clayton Kershaw, Tony Gonsolin, and Mookie Betts, so maybe that will give him just a little bit of juice. But for real, I do think Trey Turner needs to eventually get out of this little slump I'm on, and I like his chances against Liberator and the Cardinals tonight, so I'm going over 4.5 bases for Trey Turner.
So how about this? Found a little money line parlay for you in Major League Baseball, plus 196. And it's two teams that when you put them together, it's normally not going to come out at damn near plus 200, but this time it did. Couple of road favorites. Let's kind of stay in Busch Stadium there, Mario. We're going to start with the Dodgers, who are minus $1.55 against the Cardinals. 6:45 first pitch. You can watch it on TBS. LA has won 11 of their last 12 entering this game with St. Louis. Mitch White will get the call for the Dodgers as he continues to fill in, I should say, for the injured Andrew Heaney. And it's been solid from White in that fill-in role. A 3.38 ERA and 40 innings pitched this season. Plus, he's facing a Cardinals lineup short 3 starters. No Harrison Bader, no Tyler O'Neill, no Yachty tonight for the Cardinals. You mentioned Liberator there, the starter for St. Louis. He's had a very distinct pattern this season in 6 starts. He struggled, then thrown shutout ball, then struggled, then thrown shutout ball, struggled, and in his last start, you guessed it, threw shutout ball. So obviously, look, you have the teeter-totter aspect as one reason to assume struggles tonight. The other is the Dodgers lineup, which is pretty darn good. They're on fire right now in general over that 11 out of 12 stretch, but they also have a plus 151 run differential, second to only the Yankees in all of Major League Baseball. Take the Dodgers tonight to stay hot on the money line. Pair that with the Houston Astros, short price on the road against the Angels, minus 125, 8:38 Central first pitch. Luis Garcia versus Noah Syndergaard. Garcia on fire, earned the win in his last 4 starts. It stands to reason he should continue to pitch well against an Angels lineup that is a minus 20 in their run differential on the season. And to further illustrate this, Syndergaard, he's pitched really well as of late. Had a couple of tough luck losses because there's just no run support for the Angels. A minus 7 differential in the runs just when Syndergaard is on the mound. Now, there will be no Yordan Alvarez tonight for Houston. He's on the 10-day IL, but the lineup can still cause plenty of damage. Astros eventually break through here. Garcia turns in another strong outing against a struggling Angels lineup. Astros. So, look, man, people like to pair Dodgers, Astros a lot. It's very chalky. They're two of the best teams in baseball, but it's not often you can get them at short prices and it come back plus 200, plus 196. That parlay for you here. So let's ride with the Dodgers and Astros.
Sounds good. Last play of the day here for me, Musa. You know what time it is. Summer League. Makes me feel fine. It didn't make me feel so fine last night with the Hawks, and I think I learned my lesson, man. The Summer Hawks are a terrible basketball team, and I feel really bad for backing them yesterday as underdogs against the New Orleans Pelicans. They got destroyed by the Summer Pels 101-73 last night, and they also scored just 66 points in a loss to the Jazz in their first Summer League game. And my rationale for the pick yesterday was that Atlanta actually has a decent amount of talent that's fresh out of college, like young players, but it's just not working out in the Summer League. And Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, they are not walking through that door. Tyrese Martin, the rookie from UConn, had a really good season in college last year, has been really good for them. He led the team in minutes yesterday in 24 minutes. He only had 9 points, though. And Justin Tillman and Chauncey Brown Jr. have been their next best players in Summer League, which should tell you something because I've never heard of those guys before today. Meanwhile, the Summer Heat have been much better. Their futures bet for me did not pay off in the regular season, but we're jumping back in the well again for Summer League. Miami just defeated the Celtics in their last Summer League game, held them to just 78 points in a 10-point victory. The Summer Heat are led by Nikola Jovic. That's right, Nikola Jovic, one letter away from an MVP. Michael Mulder, there we go, and a familiar name for a lot of the audience, which is Javonte Smart. And in case you're wondering, Javonte, ex-LSU Tiger, originally joined the Heat as an undrafted free agent back in 2021. He ended up getting waived. Then he spent time with both the Bucks and the Wisconsin Herd, their G League affiliate, last year. Now Javonte Smart back with the Heat, and clearly Pat Riley has a little bit of interest in Amuso, because there is no way in hell he could have been worse than Kyle Lowry in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I'm sure that Pat Riley remembered he had a good young point guard that had a little interest in playing for his team. So I'm looking forward to watching him play tonight, and I'm hoping the Summer Heat can cover this 4.5-point spread against these Summer Hawks, who have been awful in Las Vegas.
Well, here we go. Look, they're also playing in Utah as well, which I found odd. Normally it's all in Vegas.
Oh, really?
But they've had a few games in Utah this season as well. I forgot, man, I can't remember who I was watching, but they were on they just had the Jazz's court down. It was the court they always use when they wear their city uniform.
Those things are awful.
Oh, they're terrible.
And that is a very random location for NBA Summer League. But in Utah in July, there's probably not very much to do, so it's probably jumping at the Summer League games.
It probably is, man. Look, why not? Hey, that's great. It's time to go out and watch some basketball.
Yeah, get some Dr. Pepper in us. Have a good time.
There you go.
Get ready for the BYU season.
So support Zach Wilson. That is our daily spread.
A lot of people do that.
It's brought to you by Suspense Games. Upgrade your game night, real life trivia game show that's brought directly to you. Upgrade a game night, upgrade a birthday party. You can use it for company team building or things like that. Just contact our guys, Spencer and Tyler Hunt, suspenseevents.com. That's how you go about doing it. If you own a restaurant, you're looking for a trivia night, they also host that separate from the game show. They'll actually be at Burger Smith tonight in Jubin. So if you want to go out and meet our guys there, Spencer, Tyler Hunt, Suspense Games, suspenseevents.com.
That's right. They'll also be at Burger Smith again tomorrow night at 6:30, and we've all really enjoyed partnering with Tyler and the rest of the guys so far, and this is a really cool experience. Like we tell you every day, games can take 45 minutes to an hour. You could play 2 games, 3 games, maybe even 4 if you'd like. So if you're looking for an extra competitive game night, trying to have some intense team building, or you want to take your party to a whole new level, Suspense Games is ready to bring a live game show experience right to you. So upgrade your game night tonight with Suspense Games.
SuspenseEvents.com for more information. Grab our first break. Come back on the other side. More Early Line, 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Mario and Musso, the early line. In times of need, get a full list of phone numbers, websites, and other important emergency information on the Demco Stormwatch page at 1045ESPN.com.
Scona inviting you to join us for Tuesday's AFR, presented by Insurance Network of Louisiana. Our LSU position preview series looks at the linebackers, and Caleb Jackson makes his commitment. We'll discuss 3 to 6, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Early line with Mario and Musso. 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Well, Musso, the number keeps getting smaller and smaller, and we are now 23 days away from the NFL preseason. Shout out to Pierre Thomas and all the other 23s out there. And the drafts for fantasy football are coming up for a lot of us. And this year, Musso, I'm extra excited for fantasy football because I've told you this on the air, off air before. You know, the people in my league, or at least my big money league, are my longtime friends. I've known them all since high school, if not childhood. And every year we look forward to getting together, you know, having some drinks and doing the draft with the board, the whole shabazz. But the last 2 years, we have not been able to meet up because 2020 was COVID. And then last season, Hurricane, what was the name of the hurricane again?
Last year?
Yeah.
Ida.
There we go. Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, I couldn't remember that either.
It feels like longer than a year ago.
It does.
But Hurricane Ida kind of ruined our fantasy football draft last year. So JBL, John Bradshaw Layfield, the name of our league, will get to congregate again this season, and I'm very excited for fantasy.
Why is y'all's league named JB? First of all, that's fantastic. But why is y'all's league named after a wrestling god?
Well, exactly, for that exact reason.
Right,
He's arguably the greatest heel in WWE history. And we could talk about this the whole segment, but just in summary, if you realize the brand revival for Bradshaw, because originally he was Bradshaw, and that was a heel
APA,
too.
yeah.
He wasn't the most skilled in-ring wrestler, and they gave him a little makeover. He was repping Texas really hard, and he got into that feud with the Undertaker, man, and he just became a legendary heel. So we hated JBL as kind of children, and now that we're older, we really respect John Bradshaw Layfield. So we play the bells, we play his intro before every draft, and that's the name of our league.
Yes, y'all should have, like, before, you know how the NFL has the NFL draft sounder whenever the pick comes in? Y'all should just play the bells before every pick. That should be y'all's pick sounder, too.
Could get a little tedious, but the intro at the beginning, that's how we know it's time for another fantasy football season. And that always gets the blood pumping a little bit, and my blood's pumping now that we're 23 days away from the preseason in the NFL. So for this segment today, I thought we could maybe discuss a couple of players that might exceed their expectations when it comes to fantasy football in 2022. Remember, we're talking about fantasy production here. And if I'm looking at the rankings according to fantasypros.com, which I reference on the show all the time, my first thought when I look at wide receivers and how they rank them is that Michael Thomas should not be wide receiver number 31. And that's where Fantasy Pros has him. And we've talked about Mike Thomas. You know, I think it's a little bit concerning that we haven't seen him on the practice field yet, like officially practicing, given the timeline of his injury. But we've at least seen him running and doing some other stuff. And the consensus seems to be that he's going to be ready for training camp. And that being said, I was a little surprised to see him this far down the rankings. I mean, I understand everything that the Saints added at wide receiver, and I understand that he's coming off of that injury, but this is still Michael Thomas here. And I know the last few years he wasn't on the field, so obviously didn't put up the numbers, but from his rookie year in 2016 up until 2019 when he got that big contract, he was historically good, especially when it comes to fantasy football. And in that time, 2016 through 19, Mike Thomas had 4 seasons finishing in the top 7 in fantasy standard leagues, and he had 1 year as the number 1 wide receiver, which was 2019, when he was killing everybody, destroying worlds. And I know he doesn't have that much experience with Jameis Winston, and I know the Saints have a lot of other weapons, but if Mike Thomas is back for training camp, you might actually end up getting pretty good value with him in your drafts.
Yeah, well, and here's something I'm curious about, too, is with the added weapons the Saints also have in the receiving core this year, does that maybe actually take away a little bit from Mike Thomas? I mean, you add in Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave. I mean, you got 3, well, at least 2 you know of studs. You expect Olave to kind of be the same thing. Could that be a major factor in there as well as him being at number 31?
I think it'll cut into it a little bit, but I think the Saints will have a higher volume of passing this year, and Mike Thomas has proven to be the best red zone threat out of all of those guys, and that includes Jarvis Landry, who in his own right has been a really good fantasy receiver, but he's still going to be wide receiver 1, and I think the Saints are still going to try to utilize the middle of the field, where Mike is really good, so he'll still put up his numbers, especially in the red zone, and it will cut into to it a little bit. Maybe he's not like top 5 wide receiver, top 10 wide receiver, but I could definitely see him approach top 20, top 15 status, which is why I was taking a little aback seeing him all the way at number 31 on these rankings. I mean, if you look at some of these players that Mike Thomas is projected to be behind right now, a lot of them would catch you by surprise as my feed does not want to load for whatever reason. But 31 for Michael Thomas would put him behind guys like Rashad Bateman on the Ravens, Elijah Moore on the Jets, who I'm high on, but ahead of Michael Thomas is a little bit questionable, and Chris Godwin, who also is coming off of an injury for the Buccaneers. He needs to show that he's back healthy for them. And Mike Thomas, yes, maybe he won't be like 2019 Mike Thomas, but there's no way he should be in the 30s.
I mean, I'm with you. I think Mike Thomas is going to have a very productive season. I think it is interesting just kind of outside looking in here in July as to why he's there. I mean, you mentioned the Jameis thing, Adam. I could see it, but I think you're right. That's low, and I mean, he's got plenty more value. It's a great value spot in your draft if you can get Mike Thomas earlier.
How about Tua Tagovailoa at QB 17, according to Fantasy Pros? And some people are really high on Tua. They have Tua on in Miami, and some people just give no respect to Tua at all. But I think at QB 17 here, it could be decent value for Tua Tagovailoa, especially if he's your second guy, which honestly, I'm trying to get Tua as my QB 2 just based on all the weapons he has. And I know in Miami, they're expecting him to take the jump, but in terms of fantasy, he's going to have a lot of weapons. I mean, they get Tyreek Hill over the offseason. We saw what Jalen Waddle was able to do in that offense. They moved him around a lot. I'm curious to see how they utilize Jalen Waddle now that Tyreek Hill is on the team. Mike Gesicki has been a really good fantasy football tight end. And they add Chase Edmonds, who's been really good catching the ball out the backfield. I think the Cardinals might miss him a little bit over there in Arizona. But Tua Tagovailoa, I was a little surprised to see at 17. Right now, according to Fantasy Pros, he's projected to be drafted behind both Justin Fields and Trey Lance, who is essentially a rookie with the San Francisco 49ers. So I think Tua as a QB2 might not be the worst thing. And I definitely would take him above those guys.
That's some disrespect there. I mean, look, I'm not a Tua, supporter here. I don't really think he's lived up to much of the hype at all that he's had coming out of Alabama. But you add Tyreek Hill, as you mentioned. I mean, you still have Jalen Waddle. I mean, you've got some options there. The main question, I think, with Tua is, can he stay healthy? And if he does, with those receivers, it's going to kind of be hard to not put up numbers.
No, even in the event if he gets hurt or gets benched and they put Teddy Bridgewater in there, I feel like he would even be a serviceable fantasy option. But just based on all the weapons, not saying Tua is going to be the most efficient. Maybe he'll still throw some picks here and there. But QB 17 with Waddle and Gesicki and Tyreek Hill on your team, I think that's a little low on the board. And as we transition positions here and start talking running backs, there's been a lot of talk about Travis Etienne over the offseason. And we know the Jaguars made the change at head coach, out with Urban Meyer, in with Doug Peterson, and they're hoping that Etienne's experience with Trevor Lawrence in college at Clemson can help him out in the NFL. And apparently James Robinson, the other running back for the Jaguars, won't be ready for training camp. We don't know when he's going to be ready to play because James Robinson tore his Achilles 6 months ago. That's typically a 9-month injury. I know some guys have toughed it out, like Quan Alexander on the Saints, and they get back sooner. But it looks like Travis Etienne will get the bulk of snaps to start the season for Jacksonville. And just based on volume alone, I think you get pretty decent value with Travis Etienne. And fantasy football players have not forgotten the season that James Robinson, the aforementioned player, had a couple of years ago. And if he could light it up in fantasy, whether or not the Jaguars are a good team this season, I do see pretty good value with Travis Etienne at running back 24, according to Fantasy Pros.
Yeah, well, sure, why not, man? I mean, I think the Jags. We talk about it often. I'm just going to be very interested to see how it goes now. First year outside of Urban Meyer, but that was a disaster.
Can't be worse.
It cannot be worse. You feel like you can kind of only go up from there. Just with all the, not to mention how bad they were on the field, just all the ancillary off the field stuff that took place as well. So much better environment. Travis Etienne, we all know how talented he is. So I mean, well, sure, yeah, I think it's be a great play.
You're going to hear me stomp for him and for Trevor Lawrence, I think, in the coming weeks. I think they could really be productive in fantasy football. And speaking of which, as I get into the next player here, remember we're just talking fantasy, not wins and losses, but Field Yates of ESPN, a guy that a lot of our audience knows pretty well, has made the case for Darnell Mooney of the Chicago Bears to break out in fantasy this season. And according to Fantasy Pros, Mooney is wide receiver number 25. And I know if it's a wide receiver for the Bears that we're talking about, a lot of people are going to have pause here, but somebody has to catch the football. We saw Allen Robinson be a really good fantasy receiver with some really bad quarterbacks over there in Chicago. And listen to the stats for Darnell Mooney here. He finished in the top 20 in both receptions and receiving yards in the NFL last season. And among all players who have at least 80 catches, Mooney averages 13 yards per catch, and that ranks fourth behind only Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. So that's pretty decent company. We're talking about a big play threat here that has a young quarterback still learning the ropes, first-time head coach, and maybe they won't be as efficient, but the volume. Again, somebody needs to catch the ball. The Bears might be playing from behind a lot. I kind of like the value with Darnell Mooney at wide receiver 25.
That's what I was going to say is somebody's got to catch the ball. Somebody's got to throw it to him, but they're going to have plenty of options, plenty of time to throw it to him because it stands to reason that the Bears will not be winning very many football games. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're going to be in the company of Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase, when you have someone like Justin Fields right now, who's, like you said, still kind of figuring it out, guy completed 56% of his passes last year. If that's who's throwing you the ball and you're still in that company, you're a pretty solid receiver. So, I mean, yeah, I don't think you can really go wrong there.
No. Shout out to Tulane, Darnell Mooney repping New Orleans. And speaking of Field Yates, he might have an increased role at ESPN if we're just speculating here, because Matthew Berry, who was with ESPN for the longest time, has left after 15 years. He announced it on Twitter on Monday. And this is somebody who's been a big part of kind of my fantasy football upbringing, Musso. I mean, Matt Berry is one of the guys when it comes to fantasy football. And I'm sure he's not going anywhere. He hasn't announced his next venture yet, but if I had to guess, I'm sure he's going to end up with one of these betting sites or one of these other fantasy sites. A lot of people have been joining DraftKings recently. I see something similar down the road for Matt Berry, but I did want to acknowledge his 15 years at ESPN because he did a really good job, and he kind of helped introduce a lot of people kind of to competitive football because people use fantasy football as an avenue to do that. And again, we won't see Matt Berry going anywhere anytime soon, but I think we should acknowledge the work he did at ESPN in the last 15 years.
Loved his cameo in the league. Thought it was great. Thought it was well done, and enjoyed that a lot.
Yes, great cameo there. Great show, The League. Maybe
Great
check
show.
it out. Maybe try to win and have fun and win at the same time. Always fun here on The Early Line, where we try to do all three of those things. And it's always fun talking fantasy football as well. Keep an eye out for some high-value options like the ones we talked about today. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 25, according to Fantasy Pros. Travis Etienne, number 24 running back, according to Fantasy Pros. And Tua Tagovailoa, QB 17. Let's see if those guys can't exceed their expectations coming up here in the football season. This is a Tuesday edition of The Early Line. More next here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Early Line with Mario and Musso. 104.5 ESPN. This week on dropbiscuit.com or wherever you listen to podcasts is our new series Pops, the Louis Armstrong story. Pops is brought to you by New Orleans & Company. Check out neworleans.com and come visit New Orleans.
Jimmy Ott and Mike Delicano live from Doe's Eat Place on Government Street in the heart of Mid-City for the Tuesday evening edition of Game Time presented by Bet Rivers. That's Game Time presented by Bet Rivers, 6 to 8 p.m. from Doe's Eat Place on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
You're getting the early line with Mario and Musso on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
The BK takeover rolls on. Just another day at the office for Brian Kelly and staff. 4-star running back Caleb Jackson out of Liberty Magnet here in Baton Rouge pledges to LSU shortly after 10:30 a.m. this morning. Became LSU's 15th commit in the class of 2023. Now up from number 8 to number 7 in the country, according to the 247 composite rankings, and sit as the second-ranked class in the SEC behind just Tennessee. What a run it's been for Brian Kelly and staff. I know that that's been said a lot, right? And it's obvious at this point, but they just keep attacking, and it all seems very, very meticulous. Before July 1st, LSU sat with 6 recruits. Not even halfway through the month of July, they've added 9. Like, that is one hell of a heater that this staff is on, and it's at positions of need, which we'll get to, and it's high-level prospects, not just from the state of Louisiana, although that's happening now too, which was a big criticism, but a wide net from all over the country. The highest-ranked recruit, obviously, is Jalen Brown out of Miami, Florida, that LSU nabbed late last week. So it's been an incredible run. Caleb Jackson, just the latest, and becomes the second running back in this class, and they ain't done.
No, they're not. We're going to see more of this, but LSU is in the midst of a serious run right now, like you mentioned, and for Jackson specifically, it's a big win for LSU because they beat out Alabama and Texas A&M for them at a position of need, like you said, and beating out those two schools, always fun, and this is somebody who's 5'10", 200, lower 200 pounds, lower center of gravity, at a position of need at running back, and a local product, gets to stay home now at a Catholic high. This is another good get for LSU in the midst of getting a lot of them.
Yeah, so you look at Caleb Jackson, number 6 running back in the country, 12th ranked player in the state of Louisiana, composite 4-star at 247, stands 5'10", 200 pounds. Second running back in the class joins Trey Holly, another Louisiana native. And, I mean, I guess it's kind of just where you start, right? We mentioned they've been doing work in positions of need. So if you look at LSU's roster this year, you have 4 running backs on the team, and it's a pretty good four-headed monster. John Emery, Noah Kane, Trey Bradford, Armani Goodwin. But stands to reason, you're not going to have Emery next year. You're not going to have Noah Kane next year. You got to replace, and you're bringing in 2 really, really solid running backs in Holly and Jackson to do just that.
Yeah, going to need to eventually reload there at that position, and Brian Kelly did a really good job, I think, going to get Kane and provide depth for this year, but that depth's going to be gone when these guys graduate, so this is going to be a welcome sight for LSU. They still need to perform this season. You still can't have a disastrous season. We're still really far away from signing day, and these commits can eventually decommit, so the guys on the team right now still need to go out there and do the work, but you have some momentum going right now on the recruiting trail, and like you said, I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
And defensive line is another one where they've just done incredible work. And again, position of need, maybe not for this season, right? You've talked a lot about depth that LSU has, and it's probably their deepest position is along the defensive front. But Ali Gay ain't going to be here next year. B.J. Ojolari, stands to reason, will not be here next year. Jaqueline Roy, most likely, he'll be draft eligible, and he turned in a really solid season last year. He builds on that. He is not going to be here next year. You go out, you get a guy like Jackson Howard, who's the top 100 player in the country, the number 1 player at his position, the number 1 player overall in his state of Minnesota for an edge rusher. Deshaun Womack, another great defensive lineman there, 4-star, right on the cusp of being a 5, top 100, 106, basically a top 100 player in the country. It's guys that can come in and play immediately as well, is what it looks like, at least on the surface. You can add in Joshua Mickens to that group as well. So defensive line, kind of the same thing as running back. You're set up pretty nicely there for this season in 2022. but they've done a lot of work already for 2023 there and have brought in what looks to be really, really good players.
As they should. Jamar Cain's done a really good job there, first-year defensive line coach. And, again, you do have some talent coming down the road, which is exciting. But you rattling off the names that's going to play this season makes me really excited to watch the LSU defensive line. Like, it's important that they don't waste the prime years of those guys like Roy and Smith, who's coming into his second season. Like, those guys have had some really good individual moments the last 2 seasons. Hopefully this year the rest of the defense can kind of get its stuff together and those guys can shine because they've done so individually, but it's been unfortunately on some really bad defenses. So excited to see all these new recruits along the defensive line. It's crucial. They will be needed with all these guys eventually leaving, but man, I'm excited to watch the D-line this season.
I am too. I think that's going to be one of the reasons LSU's defense takes a major step forward. It is just, I think, the defensive line, especially Ali Gay and B.J. Ojolari, both, if they can both stay healthy for the full season, that's one heck of a pair LSU has at defensive end this year.
LSU stops the run a little bit better this year, too. Those guys can actually pin their ears back and get after the passer. Again, the few times we have seen them do that, they've wreaked some serious havoc. Even in the bowl game, when LSU couldn't do anything, there were a lot of times where they could not block Ojolari. They could not block some of these guys. So hopefully the rest of the unit becomes a little more competent because they can be the best D-line in the SEC.
And you love the versatility of a guy like Mason Smith who can play interior and also edge rusher. Like, the guy's just a complete freak show.
Love to see it. I'll never forget the Mississippi State game a couple of years ago when he was still a recruit. I think he was visiting LSU that weekend, and they had so many fans going up to him. And this was, a smaller venue too, less fans with COVID. And they were telling him they really want him to come to LSU. He came to LSU, and so far he's kind of lived up to the hype. But again, everybody else needs to keep up with the defensive line.
That's for sure. And then one more kind of note on the recruiting class and maybe what could be coming more there. So you look at a guy like Jalen Brown, obviously, for LSU, is the top-ranked player in the class, wide receiver. And I think wide receiver is a very interesting position for LSU, obviously, going forward into next year, too. I mean, you have a lot of talent there this year. Everyone expects Kayshon Boutte to move on, right? I mean, Jeray Jenkins is finally going to exhaust his eligibility. So that's a place. Right now, LSU's got 3 receivers in their class: Brown, Kyle Parker, Mac Markway, who's also a tight end, but, just kind of depends on which service you look at for him. Shelton Sampson's obviously the name that everybody's going to look at right now, but that's another position that's really in the same boat, I think, as a running back or as defensive line, where you like what you have now, but if you look forward to the future, that's one where you would expect LSU to hopefully be pretty aggressive going forward in the rest of this class.
100%. Hopefully you can get Shelton, but Jalen Brown was huge. Anytime you get a 5-star, I don't care if he's from Louisiana, from Miami, that was huge. And I'm sure the receiver class is going to end up rounding itself out, and it'll still look really good. And you do have some guys that you will lose, but Jack Besh will still be on the team next year, and he'll also represent the team at SEC Media Days, interestingly enough. So wide receiver U, I think, will continue to be wide receiver U. We'll see who can't step up and be the next, Boutte, Chase, or DJ Sharp. But as a unit, you're still looking really, really deep there this season and for years to come.
Yeah, and no, you definitely like the talent. Excited to see Jack Besh in year number 2. Obviously, I mean, that guy was he stepped up major in the absence of Kayshon Boutte last year for LSU as much as you could. I mean, that really hurt the passing game a lot, losing that guy. I mean, shocker, he's a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. You lose that guy, your passing game suffers, right? But I mean, Besh did wonders stepping up into that role, and excited to see that guy take the next step this year. He will be at SEC Football Media Days, so we'll get to hear from him next week. So will B.J. Ojolari, and Mike Jones, linebacker, will be the other attendee for LSU. You've got to hear a good bit from those guys, whether it be actually on this station or just in regular scheduled media availabilities throughout the season or throughout the offseason. I think we actually heard from all of those guys in spring sessions as well this year. So definitely some of the more vocal on the team, and excited to hear what they have to say next Monday. LSU, of course, will go day one. I mean, they're going to be the headliner second year in a row. LSU will just get it out of the way early.
Brian Kelly standing out there at the podium as LSU's head coach. Still going to be a little weird for me, but I am excited for it, and I'm excited to see Jack Besh over there. I think that's a good option. Like you said, he's a little extroverted. We talked to him a little bit at walk-ons when we did the event there before the first baseball game over there at Alex Box, and I'm sure he's not going to be afraid to hold back his opinion, so I'm excited about that. I do wish Kayshon Boutte was going. honestly, just because he's kind of the heart and soul of the offense, and he's supposed to be a leader on this team. I know in the offseason, Brian Kelly was kind of publicly getting into him for not being around the team despite the fact that he's injured, and I hope this isn't kind of building off of that. And if Kayshon Boutte stays healthy, it won't be a big deal, but I just really hope that it's not another situation like Derek Stingley, where he just shows out as a freshman, shows enough tape, but then can never really get back on the field healthy before he goes back to the NFL. So Kayshon Boutte going to be the key for LSU's offense this season. I wish we could have seen him over their media days.
Yeah, I don't really think you have to worry about that, though. I mean, he kind of came on late his freshman year and then was on just a torrid pace last year before, blowing out his ankle. So, I mean, if he's fully healthy, I think you're going to get, the Kayshon Boutte that we all expect. And you're going to need it for LSU's passing offense, regardless of whoever is at the quarterback position, because the guy still ended up, as your leader in receptions, and still ended up as your leader in receiving touchdowns last year after missing half the season. So, I think you're pretty set there. It's just, can others step up around him? Like, what you're going to have in Jack Bech. Can you get that other guy? Can you get one more to step up there, whether it is Jeray Jenkins or Brian Thomas or Chris Hilton or Malik Neighbors, even, who really came on strong last year. I think everybody remembers the touchdown catch against Kentucky that Malik Neighbors had, where he caught it behind his back. Basically, it was insane. So you definitely love the talent there, and guys will move on after this year, but you love what they're already doing in the recruiting class with a guy like Jaylen Brown. You see more and more smoke around Shelton Sampson staying home and going to LSU, just whether it's, how all the players, over the weekend with the hashtag Shelton stays, or the actual crystal ball predictions from guys who cover this for a living with high confidence right now projecting him to LSU. Now, again, that's going to be a long battle. That's going to be one of those that regardless whenever he commits wherever, that one's not over, right? That's going to be one of those. So you'll wait and see. But that is definitely one of the huge names left on LSU's board.
Yeah, a lot of hashtags coming up there trying to recruit him. But either way, LSU's sitting pretty right now, I think. And I know that Todd Jones, shout out to Todd Jones in the YouTube chat, is saying he doesn't look that much at recruiting rankings. Recruiting is the same, dog and pony show. We get top 10 recruits every year. But like Musso said, they literally jumped 22 rankings in the standings there. And
in 12 days.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. And the blend, too. The positions of need, the talent from outside the state, now the talent from inside the state, culminating with this running back here. They're doing really good. I'm not a big recruiting guy either, but we can't act like this isn't huge for the future of a team that's in transition right now, first-year coach.
No, for sure. And, I mean, look, you kind of saw it's funny how the I guess you used the word melt, started a little bit there, just because you saw what Brian Kelly did when he got here to end up with the 12th ranked class in the country in a short time period of, just when he takes the job, to the early signing period to the second signing period and whatnot, get you up to 12th overall, just from high school perspective. But then you add in with the work they did in the transfer portal and combine it, and LSU ranked 7th in the nation. The guy can recruit. Like, we know that. I mean, I guess I can understand a little bit actually, I really don't understand the concern about, Louisiana or whatnot. Now that's tied for the most commits, Louisiana and Georgia, where LSU has the most commits in this class right now. So, I mean, Brian Kelly can recruit.
Yeah, being in 30s.
Really well, actually.
Exactly. But being in 30s is never a good thing. But like you said, Brian Kelly kind of laid the precedent of what he can do. It's not like a Billy Napier situation in Florida where it's just an abject disaster. Like, eventually they were going to recover, and so far they have. Again, still need to go out there and do it on the field, or some of these commitments can become decommitments. But right now, LSU football is sitting pretty on the trail.
And Gators are recruiting pretty well over there in Gainesville too, man. I'll tell you. We'll grab a break, come back, close out early line next. 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
The Early Line. 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Our listeners fire off their opinions on the jimsfirearms.net hotline at 499-1045. Keep listening for your next chance to shoot us your thoughts with the jimsfirearms.net hotline on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
on Wednesdays off the bench, our guy Matt Flynn stops by for some flestering. Plus, we continue the countdown of football as LSU the Saints is a couple of weeks away. Off the bench, 7 to 10 a.m., 104.5 ESPN.
Early Line with Mario and Musso. 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Wrapping up the show on a Tuesday. Know that Rafael Esparza today. He's busy doing Las Vegas stuff, but he will be back next week. Looking forward to the conversation with him. Tomorrow we'll have another edition of Win Total Wednesday. We'll take a look at another division in the NFL, preview that division for the upcoming season, maybe talk a little college football tomorrow on Win Total Wednesday, but we'll see. A lot of college football talk next week during SEC football media days. We'll get into win totals, some prop bets if they're available, all of that coming next week and towards the end of this week. So excited for NFL football, but starting to get juiced up for college as well.
For sure, man. Always excited for college football, especially around here. I mean, I think no shock, not breaking any news that college football is a lot more popular in the South than the NFL.
Yes, and sports betting is very popular in this region. It was legalized last year, but table games is always popular. And over the weekend, I don't know if you saw this, Musa, but our guy Drake, Miami Heat super fan, got a big win on one roll of roulette. This is Drake winning over $1 million on one roll.
Tell him take the foot off the pedal real quick. We need that 11.
We need that 11 we roll.
Get back!
Black 11. I don't know if Black 11 holds any significance for Drake, but I think you could tell by the reaction there that that's pretty genuine. Shout out to Drake.
Did that just say he won $11.9 million on that roll?
Oh, you're right. I'm selling Drake short. My bad. He won over $11 million on one roll. Not sure exactly how much he put down, but probably not that much because you realize the odds of hitting that one space in the roulette. Like that's very unlikely.
So, look, I know he's Drake and he's got a lot of money, obviously, and whatnot, but you go cash out after that. Like,
100%.
That's the end of the night. That's all you do. Cash out, get your chips, leave, and maybe go back another night. Just you end it on that.
Just hold on. We're going home.
Well done. Yeah. No, that was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's fun to do these things alone. It is fun to win $11 million, whether you're alone or not. Do you ever play
roulette? Get richer, man.
You ever play roulette, Musa?
No, I don't do table games.
Aw.
I'm not a table games guy. I would just much rather bet on sports.
I do. I would too, but I do like to play roulette, and I'm usually the sides. I'll go red or black, but if I ever do any like number and I'm trying to get lucky, and I haven't won that way yet, I'm always going 9 for Drew Brees and Joe Burrow, the two quarterbacks that have won championships for my team, or 24 black in an effort to pay tribute to Kobe Bryant. Haven't won that way yet, but I will say when I went to Vegas a couple of months ago, I hit green twice. First ever time I got double zeros on Vegas, bet on it, won. Then I did the single zeros and I won again. So I have had some good luck in roulette, but not as good as Drake there.
No, not $11.9 million good.
That's insane. Shout out to Drake for winning all that money, and shout out to everybody for interacting with us on today's Early Line. We'll be back from 2 to 3 p.m. tomorrow. Don't miss it. We'll have Win Total Wednesday. AFR coming up next, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.